Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our story. Today we'll be reading chapters 19, 20, and 21. I think, if I remember correctly, chapter 20 is a little bit lengthy, but 21 is really short, and I think 19 is just medium. So this might be a little bit longer video, but we're really kind of in the meat of this story. We're in the meat of it. Remember, this is Surviving the Applewhites by Stephanie Tolan. Test number 60652. This is a level 5.5 book. It's worth a whopping 7 points. A whopping 7 points. So, if you're paying attention, learning this story, you can get yourself 7 points, which is awesome. Now, once again, I do have my trusty bottle of water. Might need it today because it's a little bit longer chapter. I trust everyone's doing well. Everybody's being safe. That, without any further ado, because we do have a little bit to read today, let's begin. I feel like I was 3D there. Let's begin. That's a close up of my face. You see all my gray hairs. Chapter 19. For a week, let me try this all again. For a week, Govindaswamy had been teaching them to meditate. Edie had put meditation under healthful living in her curriculum notebook so that she could count it as an academic accomplishment. She was sitting cross-legged on the schoolroom floor now, concentrating on her breathing. In, out, in, out. It was supposed to keep her from thinking, center her, calm her. Right now, it didn't seem to be working. What she wanted to do was scream. Hal had refused to let Jeremy Bernstein use his computer. When Sybil had broached the subject, speaking to Hal's closed door, he had said that he was creating a website where he could sell his sculpture, and he needed his computer every minute. Besides, he couldn't let anyone into his room any more than he could come out of his room himself. I need my creative privacy, he had shouted through the door. So Jeremy had been allowed to take over the schoolroom computer almost completely. You know, how does Hal eat? Think about that. Just wondering. Anyway, he was at the keyboard now, tapping away. He'd been there last night when she'd finally given up and gone to bed. This morning he had been there already at 8:30. She'd been trying to read A Midsummer Night's Dream while she waited for him to finish whatever it was he was doing now. But the incessant tap of the computer keys had made it impossible to concentrate. She hadn't done her math. She hadn't written the story she was supposed to write for language arts. She'd gone to her father about it as soon as he got up to beg him to put his foot down either with Hal or with Jeremy. But he told her that things were going badly with the Traybridge Little Theater. He had a meeting with the technical staff that afternoon to sort things out. He had no psychic energy left over for trivialities. Trivialities. She'd taken the problem to her mother then. That had been a mistake. She had stuck her head into her mother's office, and her mother had thrown a dictionary at her. Well, maybe not actually at her. It had missed by a foot. Sybil Jameson was having writer's block. Edie wished her mother had told the family that. She never would have gone near her office if she'd known. They all knew better than to go near Sybil during a block. That was Jeremy's fault, too, Edie thought. With him there doing his article about Sybil's great American novel, asking her questions about it, begging to be allowed to read the newest bits of it, she didn't dare to admit that the great American novel had come to a screeching halt. Plot, she had told Edie after apologizing for throwing the dictionary. That's the whole trouble. I keep writing plot. I actually killed a character off yesterday morning. I couldn't help myself. My masterpiece is turning inexorably into a Petunia Grantham mystery. Edie had ended up going down to the kitchen to make her mother a soothing cup of tea. She tried to find Archie then, but he'd gone fishing. Archie had become unaccountably obsessed with fishing. Lucille, who had been meditating herself with Edie, found her, looked up at her, and smiled through a wreath of incense. The smile reminded Edie of Govindaswamy. What can possibly be wrong in the present moment? Lucille had said to her. Ask yourself that, and you'll find the answer. Edie had no idea what that meant, but she could recognize a dead end when she encountered it. Even Zedediah had let her down. Consider it an unexpected blessing, he said. You don't want to sit at a computer now. It's October. The leaves are turning. The air is cooling off. Day after day, we have sunshine and blue sky, but it's all too fleeting. The rainy season's on its way. Go out now while the world is still perfect. Smell it. Listen to it. Take it before it goes. I thought you wanted us to learn, she said. There are many ways to learn, her grandfather had said. Edie discovered now that she had lost track of her breathing altogether. In, out, that was no good. She opened her eyes and saw immediately Jake's metamorphosis project. Almost half of the caterpillars were now dark, curved shapes hanging by thin threads from the twigs he'd put in. The others were busily munching away on bunches of parsley, growing ever fatter, leaving piles of tiny dark green balls of caterpillar dung on the floor of the aquarium. She hated Jake Semple. Of course, this was a better idea than paper mache. Why had it never occurred to her to collect caterpillars? The day Jake had made the aquarium had been the last day he and Edie had been a class. It had been agreed at dinner that night that there wasn't really any more need for clumping them. Jake had shown initiative, good sense, creativity, even cooperation, so Jake could do his thing, whatever, besides singing, he decided that thing might be, and she could go back to doing hers. Since then, as far as she could tell, Jake's thing had almost nothing to do with real work. His thing had been to go hiking with Winston. Most of the time, Destiny tagged along. They'd take a lunch in a backpack and come back late in the afternoon, sweaty or muddy, singing at the top of their lungs. Then they'd check to see if any butterflies had hatched and unload whatever they'd collected on their rambles. Jake called it all natural history. Edie called it clutter. The schoolroom was littered with their mess. There were shoe boxes full of bright leaves, bowls full of hickory and beech nuts, pine cones and acorns. There were bird feather stones, a big jar of slimy green water from the pond that Destiny claimed was full of teeny buggy things, and they would check on every so often with a big magnifying glass. Jake hadn't even looked for a book that would tell them what the buggy things were. Thank you. Okay. Yes, you can. Sorry about that. Stella was wanting to use the phone. Buggy things were. Destiny called everything they brought back, just like the caterpillars, magics. Her little brother might learn about metamorphosis, but it seemed perfectly clear to Edie that he was learning something, nothing else at all. She disentangled her legs and got up from the floor. If she couldn't write or do her math or do research on the internet, she'd take her copy of A Midsummer Night's Dream outside and finish reading it before the rainy season. She had just gotten it out of her desk when she heard a car skid to a stop on the driveway and a car door slam, followed by footsteps thundering up onto the porch. Help! The front door banged open and then slammed shut. Help! It was her father's voice, booming so loud he could have been heard halfway to Treybridge. Help! I said, help, help, help! Where is this family when you need them? There was a pause. Then, fire! Jeremy leaped up from his seat at the computer. He and Edie collided as they tried to get through the schoolroom door at the same time. When they got to the front hall, Sybil was coming down the stairs, her hair disheveled, her computer glasses bouncing on her chest. Cordelia came from the kitchen, a donut in her hand. They're right, her father said. Never yell for help these days. Nobody wants to help. But yell fire, and they come like bats out of hell, intent on saving their own skins. What is it? Sybil asked. What's happened? By this time, Lucille and Govindaswamy and Zedediah had all reached the front porch and were trying unsuccessfully to sort out who would hold the door and who would come in through it. Is someone dying? Govindaswamy asked. Take me to him. Who is it? Not who, what, Randolph said. Dying, dead. There's no need to yell anymore, Sybil said. We're all here now. At least everybody within a radius of 5 miles is here. What are you talking about? My show! I'm talking about my show, The Sound of Music. You may have heard of it. No need for sarcasm, Randolph, Zedediah said. They've all quit. Who's all quit? Cordelia asked. The entire technical staff, designer, costume, choreographer, lights, props, even the stage manager. Murder. That's what it is. Cold-blooded murder. What happened? What happened? I just told you. They all quit. I called a technical meeting to sort out a few problems, and 10 minutes into it, they all just got up and walked out. No reason whatsoever. There must have been a reason. People don't just, though that wretched Montrose woman put them up to it. That's the reason. Ever since I refused to cast that untalented little brat of hers, she'd been looking for a way to get rid of me, but she couldn't just cancel the show. Not with the way I cast it. Somebody might think it was racism. The theater might lose its funding. But what did they say the reason was? Sybil persisted. Oh, well, they said that I was too demanding. They said I was a perfectionist, that I didn't respect them. The stupid, incompetent, clueless ignoramuses. Now I ask you, sounds about right to me, Zedediah said. Don't start, Father. Oh, Sybil said. Oh, I get it now. I understand why you came in hollering help at the top of your lungs. You've gone and bullied those poor people. Bullied? Bully, I'm the director. They're the tech staff, and you've gone and bullied and belittled those poor people until they couldn't take it anymore. And now you expect us to come running to the rescue. I expect my talented and creative family to gather around me and support me in my hour of need. Nobody asked you to accept that job, Randolph. It's my work. I'm a director. I direct. They offered me a show, and I took it on. Which of you would have done anything different? This is a crisis, an emergency, a screaming disaster. The rest of us have work to do, too, Sybil said. Lucille put her hand on Randolph's arm. What exactly do you need? Costumes, sets, props, choreography, music, lights, everything. I can do costumes, Lucille said. She turned to Sybil. We could do them together. You could use a little break from that great American novel, couldn't you? Sybil stood for a moment, her hand on the stair railing. She glanced at Jeremy Bernstein and then looked back at Lucille, carefully avoiding Edie's eyes. Well, it would be a great sacrifice, of course. The book has been going so smoothly. Whatever. But, all right, she turned to Randolph. I'll do it on one condition. Randolph sighed loudly. What condition is that? That you don't try bullying me. If your family is going to save your skin, you'd better remember that we're all artists in our own right. You may direct, you may not bully. You know me, my dear. I always give respect where respect is due. The door at the top of the stairs opened a crack. I'll design the set. Hal's voice called down. The door clicked shut again. Ooh, Hal. I suppose Archie and I could build it, Zedediah said. All right, Cordelia said, and she took a bite of the donut. I'll do the choreography. I need someone to play the music, Randolph said. Could you play the show, too? Cordelia shook her head. I don't read music. You know that. I play by ear. I could contribute, Govindaswamy said. I could play the music on my sitar. Sitar? That Indian stringed instrument? Thank you. It's good of you to offer, but I don't think Rodgers and Hammerstein thought of having the score orchestrated by sitar. Jeremy Bernstein cleared his throat. Excuse me, but perhaps I could play the show. Wonderful, Randolph said. The theater has a halfway decent synthesizer. I can arrange for you to, I have never actually played a synthesizer. What do you play? A dulcimer, I suppose? Or a didgeridoo? There was a long silence. Finally, Jeremy mumbled something that Edie couldn't hear. Her father hadn't heard either. What? What do you play? Bernstein cleared his throat again and said, The accordion? You're kidding. Bernstein looked up, his mouth tightening. I am not kidding. I learned during my family's summers in the Poconos when I was a kid. I wore a satin shirt and played an accordion band. You have your accordion with you? He shook his head. Of course not. Nobody knows. I haven't told a soul about this since I left junior high school, but I could have my mother ship it. Accordion? The sound of music on the accordion? Well, why not? Randolph said. It's better than kazoos. Edie turned and headed back toward the schoolroom. As intense and dramatic as all this was, it had nothing to do with her. Her father needed everybody else, not her. Edie, her father called. Where are you going? To get my Shakespeare, she said. You don't need me. Don't need you? Didn't you hear me say my stage manager quit? Of course I need you, more than anyone. There's nobody else in this family even remotely organized enough to handle that job. There's no time for Shakespeare now. There's work to be done. No time for Shakespeare, but we're doing theater? Okay. Edie gave her head a little shake as if to clear her ears. Her father dug into his briefcase and came up with a fat spiral notebook, a yellow legal pad covered with handwritten notes, and a calendar. He held them out to her. Let's go someplace where we won't be disturbed. I need you all caught up and ready to go before tonight's rehearsal. I'll talk to the rest of you at dinner. There wasn't a fire. The guy's way overly dramatic. He's just like, oh, nobody will come and help me. Nobody, fire! Calls fire and see if they come. Well, that was the end of chapter 19. Chapter 20. Jake was trying to get ready for rehearsal with Destiny, yodeling the lonely goatherd song in his wake, when it dawned on him that his whole life had slipped finally and utterly out of control. He'd become impossibly entangled with the Applewhites. First, Winston had adopted him, and then, by what seemed the same invisible and mysterious process, Destiny had too. The kid had begun explaining to anyone who would listen that Jake was the bestest brother in the whole wide world. Jake had told him that just because he had come to live at Wits End, and it didn't mean he was Destiny's brother, but Destiny was impervious to minor details of fact. Yeah, that's his brother. When the family took over all the technical jobs on The Sound of Music, everybody was too busy working on the show to have time to look after a 4-year-old. Jake only had to go to rehearsal. He had more time than anybody. And since Destiny had already adopted him anyway, he had somehow become a kind of full-time babysitter. Nobody had actually asked him to look after Destiny, and he hadn't exactly volunteered. It had just happened. Jake could understand why Hal wasn't enough of a brother for Destiny. The set designs had appeared outside his door as he finished them. Then he built a model, which had also been left in the hall during the night, followed by the renderings, the drawings that Zedediah and Archie were using to build the parts of the set that they could build in the wood shop. So far, none of this had required Hal to come out of his room. Jake had still never met him face to face. He's been there for a while. Wits End had become a beehive of theatrical activity. The number of costumes required was vastly greater than Lucille and Sybil could handle alone. So Cordelia, who had quickly finished the choreography and only had to go to a few rehearsals, was immediately drafted into the costume crew. Lucille had a sewing machine, but 2 more had been rented and bolts and bolts of cloth brought from town. When even the 3 of them, working steadily and grumbling loudly, could not churn out nuns' habits fast enough, they shanghaied Govindaswamy, who was pretty good with the needle, to help. Jake had no idea what a guru normally did, except for meditating, which didn't seem to be a full-time occupation. If Govindaswamy was any sort of example, gurus had a variety of talents. After Randolph's emergency had been declared, when it became clear that nobody had time to fix meals, Govindaswamy had abandoned his fast and taken over the kitchen. His sewing was adequate, but his cooking turned out to be spectacular. Dramatic, intense, hot, but spectacular. Grocery runs were no longer a haphazard occurrence. Having quickly discovered that Traybridge had no grocery that stocked the ingredients he needed, Govindaswamy would borrow Archie's pickup and disappear for hours at a time, coming back with huge bags of rice, bags of and boxes of meats and vegetables, and various strange herbs and spices, from which he concocted meals the like of which Jake had never encountered. Once, after Wolfie had gotten loose again and torn open a huge burlap bag full of rice that Govindaswamy had set on the ground by the truck while he took the rest of his purchases inside, Jake had seen the man looking speculatively at the goat. But Jake figured that had been only his imagination. Even if Indians ate goat, which Jake didn't think they did, Govindaswamy would never go after Lucille's beloved Wolfie. He wants to eat it. It was an education in itself to watch Govindaswamy in the kitchen. Passion, he would say to Jake and Destiny as he moved around the room, chopping and stirring and tasting. Passion is necessary to all of life. All of life, meditating, working, cooking, eating, especially eating. It took the Applewhites no time at all to adapt to the change in their dietary habits. Cordelia even gave up her green gunk. No matter how busy they were, everybody stopped whatever they were doing at lunch and again at dinner time to gather in the dining room for the feast Govindaswamy prepared. There were curries, chutneys, and a wonderful soft flatbreads. As much food as appeared on the table invariably disappeared before the end of the meal. Some of the dishes were so spicy they were almost too painful to eat, but Govindaswamy explained that yogurt and sugar both cooled the tongue. He served plenty of yogurt sauces and gallons of Destiny's favorite grape Kool-Aid. It was such a dinner they had just finished. Jake's mouth still tingled from the lamb curry. Now he was doing his best to make sure he had everything he would need at rehearsal. It wasn't easy. The other actors only had to take their script, maybe a bottle of water, and something to do while they were waiting to go on stage. Jake had to take Winston's leash in case the dog needed to go out during rehearsal, his water dish, and a bag of liver treats to distract him from howling along with the accordion. There was something about certain notes on the accordion that sent the dog into long, drawn-out howls that only liver treats could stop. Winston's essential items were already packed in one of the large canvas bags Lucille had provided. Destiny's needs were considerably more complicated. It wasn't easy to keep the kid busy and occupied and out of mischief for the 3 or 4, sometimes even 5 hours of rehearsal. Even for a 4-year-old, Destiny's boredom threshold seemed extraordinarily low. Every night, Jake filled the bags with as many distractions as he could think of. He took the picture books, never the same ones twice in a row, and he took a thick pad of paper and watercolor markers. And he always threw in a few toys, though Destiny did not seem particularly interested in toys. During the last rehearsal, Destiny had found a screwdriver somewhere and spent the whole time Jake was on stage unscrewing seat bottoms, oh my gosh, in the auditorium. No one had noticed what he was doing until Mrs. Montrose, who had come to observe the rehearsal, sat down in one of the unscrewed seats. Uh-oh. It detached and crashed to the floor, taking her with it. She had blamed Randolph. Randolph had blamed Jake. So now Jake scoured the schoolroom to come up with new ideas. He added a few handfuls of Legos, some brightly colored sticks and modeling clay, and a box full of miniature cars. Anything else you want to take? He asked Destiny. Destiny stopped singing to ponder this question. The caterpillars, he said. I can't take the caterpillars, Jake told him. What if they gets to be butterflies while we're gone? They won't all do it at the same time, Jake assured him. I'll take off the top, and if one does, it'll be here fluttering around in the schoolroom when we get back. Destiny went back to his song. Cordelia hurried in, carrying a pair of dark brown pants and a shirt. She tossed them at Jake. Your messenger uniform. At least I think it'll do. I don't I don't know what the messengers wore in Austria in the 30s, but take it with you and wear it for your scene tonight. See what the emperor of the world thinks. If he likes it, I can scratch another costume off the list. Except except for the hat. We don't have a hat yet. Destiny stopped singing. I want a uniform. Make me a one too, Delia, with a hat. It's a costume. You're not in the show. You don't get a costume. Cordelia's voice was tight. But I want one, like Jake's, with a hat. I want to listen. You little beast. There are 46 people in this show, and most of them have at least 4 costumes. Do you know? Do you not? Or you do not get a costume? Nah. I only have 2, Jake said. This one and the SS uniform. Randolph said those are rented. Yeah, but we have to do alterations to make them fit. I am not a costumer. I am a dancer, a choreographer. Never again, I tell you. Never, ever, ever again. Cordelia turned to go. Thank heavens for the Mother Abby's. She muttered. She muttered as she left. One habit for the whole show, and I finished it. Jake folded the uniform and put it into the bag with Destiny's toys. Okay, guy, let's go. Destiny stood with his arms crossed, yet not moving. I want a costume. I want to be in the show. You can't. People in the show have to sing and act. I can sing. What do you got to do to act? Pretend you're becoming someone you aren't. Jake said. I can pretend. I pretend I'm a pirate all the time. It's too late. All the parts are already taken. You get to be audience. Does audience get a costume? No. Come in. It's time to go. Or no, come on, it's time to go. The trip to rehearsals required 2 vehicles. The Miata with Randolph and Edie left 15 minutes ahead because they needed to get to the theater in time to set up. Then came Sybil's Volvo station wagon, driven by Cordelia, with Jeremy Bernstein and his accordion. Jake and Destiny and Winston, usually Destiny sang and Destiny sang and talked the whole way to Treybridge. Tonight he sat at the corner of the back seat and sulked. At the time, the restful silence seemed like a good thing. It was only later that Jake realized that a sulky Destiny was never a good thing. Wearing the messenger uniform that Randolph said made him look like a UPS delivery man. Jake had just finished whirling Janine around and was getting himself ready for the kiss that ended their dance when he smelled something burning. Over Janine's shoulder, he saw a billowing plume of white smoke. Fire! He yelled. In the ensuing panic, the youngest of the child actors fell off the stage. Her screams combined with Winston's frenzied barking to nearly drown out the contradictory orders being shouted from all directions. Call 911! Get out! Get out! Everybody, get outside! Find the fire extinguisher! Call 911! It was Edie who found the extinguisher and put out the fire before any serious damage was done. It had started in a wastebasket backstage, where Destiny had taken apart the pad of paper, crumpled every sheet into a ball, and set fire to it to the papers with Jake's lighter. Let's see. He had found the lighter in the pocket of Jake's pants after Jake had changed into his messenger uniform and gone on stage for his scene. I was acting, Destiny explained when he was found with the incriminating lighter still in his hand. I was pretending to be Jake, burning down the school, only I don't have any gasoline. Randolph, of course, after decreeing that Destiny was never to have matches, lighters, or even paper in his possession again, ever in his entire life, blamed Jake. Why do you think they're all blaming Jake? What about Jake's past says fire? Could it be the rumor about him burning down all of Treybridge Middle? I'm going to get me a sip of water before we begin our last chapter for the day, chapter 21. Good water. Chapter 21. Edie had very little time to revel in being a hero. The show must go on, her father said once it was clear that it could. Fires out, no real damage done. Call the next scene. The next scene was all the children, Edie said. Gretel fell off the stage. Her mother took her to the emergency room. We'll do it without her tonight. Then she can catch up in the next rehearsal. There won't be a next rehearsal for her, said the nurse who was playing the role from of the housekeeper. That was a broken arm. We're going to have to find a new Gretel, Edie told her father. That's impossible. No one else who auditioned for that part could possibly play it. That's why that's why I cast her in the first place. We'll just have to find someone, Edie said. The phone rang early in the next morning when Edie was in the schoolroom revising the history section of her curriculum. Instead of the Civil War, her fall history project from now on would be World War II, specifically the Nazi occupation of Austria. That way she could commit the show and as schoolwork. The phone rang again. When nobody had answered it by the third ring, Edie picked it up. It was Mrs. Montrose, president of the board of the Trowbridge Little Theater. I want to speak to your father, the woman said. I understand there was an arson attempt at the theater last night. Not arson, Edie hastily assured her. It was purely an accident. I have my sources, the woman said, and they say the fire was deliberately set. Furthermore, a child was injured. It was only a broken arm, Edie said. I wish to speak to Randolph Applewhite immediately. I'm sorry, but he's not here, Edie said. Strictly speaking, this was not a lie. Her father was not in the schoolroom. It was only 8 o'clock in the morning. He was upstairs in bed, sound asleep. May I take a message? You tell him that I'm canceling the show. From the moment he took over this project, I have had serious doubts about the appropriateness of his choices. But this disaster is the final straw. The Trowbridge Little Theater is a historic landmark, and we came perilously close to losing it. As for injuries, our liability insurance does not. Edie thought fast. That will be a shock to the television crew that's coming for the opening. I'm sure you know that the Sound of Music is expected to be the centerpiece of the story they're putting on next week. I don't care about that. I care about the future of. Edie hurried on. I was planning to call you this morning. Actually, it was a little girl playing Gretel who broke her arm, and if the show were able to go on, we would need to replace her. I noticed that your daughter auditioned for that role, as well as the role of Brigida originally. I was hoping you could bring her by to let her audition again. Of course, there would be no point of the shows being canceled. There was a long silence, broken only by what sounded like fingernails being tapped on a hard surface. Would this be an open audition? Oh, no, only your daughter. My father just wants a chance to hear her again. He told me that none of the others could possibly play the role. In fact, he actually refused to hear any of them again. Well, the tapping went on again for a moment. When would he need to see her? Perhaps the two of you could come this evening, Edie said. After your daughter auditions, you could stay for dinner. We're having fried chicken. The associate producer said, or the associate producer will be here for dinner as well. These things were both perfectly true. Govindaswamy had promised them fried chicken, and Jeremy had taken to introducing himself as associate producer. You could talk to him about the television project. This time, the pause was considerably shorter. Dinner? I think we might be able to manage dinner. What time? Edie grinned. Rehearsal is due to begin at 7. How about coming here at about 4:30? You and your daughter can meet the producer. Your daughter can sing, and then we'll all have dinner. All right then, 4:30. But tell your father that there will have to be much stricter control maintained during rehearsals in the future. Of course, he was just saying that very thing last night uh, after the accident. That too was true. Uh, you're not to let Destiny out of your sight for an instant, he had told Jake. When Jake had reminded him that Destiny had done the deed while Jake was on stage, he he had threatened to put Destiny on a leash and tie the leash to a theater seat. That's kind of funny. When Edie put down the phone, she sighed. It had worked, but Mrs. Montrose was only the first part of the problem. The second part was Randolph Applewhite. Absolutely not, he said over breakfast when she told him her plan. I can't possibly use that child as Gretel. Gretel's the youngest. She has to be little and cute. The Montrose kid has a wretched voice. She's not little, and she's definitely not cute. It's completely impossible. I thought appearances didn't count, Sybil said, looking up from the hem she was stitching. Not when there's talent. That child has no talent. Come at 4:30, and they're staying for dinner. If you don't do this, Mrs. Montrose will cancel the show. Let her. Better to cancel than to have a Gretel with a voice like a buzzsaw. No, 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 Jeremy Bernstein said. If the show is canceled, the television piece will be canceled. And two, I'll never get another chance to produce for network television. The multiracial sound of music is the hook the TV execs bought. They won't do the story without the hook. So don't let the TV people cancel us, Cordelia said. I want to get my bit in about the death of Ophelia. And my gallery showing, Archie said, and Lucille's new volume of poetry. Sybil held up the black costume she was hammering. Do you mean to tell me that you would let the 7 million nuns' habits we've made go to waste? Do you mean to tell me that I've given up my writing time and let my masterpiece go totally cold for nothing? Edie resumed her attack. Come on, Dad. Just listen to Priscilla Montrose. Talk to her mother over dinner. Maybe you can convince her to let the show go on, even if you don't cast her daughter. You have to at least try. All right, all right, all right. But I will not, under any circumstances, cast that dreadful girl as Gretel. End of chapter 21. Well, that guy, Randolph, is way overly dramatic. Jake has lost all sense of his personality that he had when he got there. He's kind of a cool dude, and we kind of, honestly, sometimes I kind of forget about him. ED finally has a purpose in this artsy family. It sounds as if things are kind of coming together. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that. I hope everybody enjoyed those 3 chapters. Remember, tomorrow, 6:30, I'll be reading the next 3. We're on chapter 22. We've only got 8 chapters left in this book. On Monday, we will be finished with this. So, actually, it's 9 chapters, so I'll read chapter 22. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed it. And on that note, I want everyone to have a wonderful evening. Don't forget, if you like this story, please subscribe to my channel. If you know somebody else that might like this story, tell them. Go to my channel, subscribe, and listen to these stories. It's a good way to get those AR points through the roof. All right? On that note, I want everybody to have a wonderful evening, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.